So this is the second video where we are describing Monday's class opener, and on this one we write the simplest polynomial function given the roots. So what are they really giving us here? They're giving us answers. So what are the answers? Well, the answer is x equals -2, we have x equals 3, we have x equals 4. If they're giving us the roots, they're giving us the answers. Now what we need to do is work backwards and write it in factored form. So in order for me to make this equal to 0, I'd have to go +2 and +2, so I'd end up with x plus 2, and I'd have equals 0. Okay, on this one, -3 minus 3, you'd have x minus 3, and it would be equal to 0. If you subtract 4 and subtract 4, you'd have x minus 4 and set it equal to 0. Now, this is kind of like where you factor and then you split them all up using zero product property. So you have this equal to 0, that equal to 0, that equal to 0, and you solve all of them. And if you did solve all of them, you'd get the answers: x equals -2, x equals 3, x equals 4. What we're doing here is working backwards. So let's write it in factored form. The answer will be f of x or g of x or whatever you want to call it equals x plus 2, x minus 3, and also x minus 4. Ta-da, piece of cake. Let's move on. This one over here is a little bit more challenging because when you set this up, when you go x equals 2/3, all right, and you want to work backwards. Remember, this is your answer. You want the factored form that gave you this answer. So what I would do is multiply by 3, so it'll cancel, multiply by 3, so you really will get 3x equals 2, and that's an equation that if you were to solve will actually give you the 2/3 answer that we have above. But anyways, we're not done yet. You want to set it equal to 0, so what I'm going to do is subtract 2 and subtract 2, so I'd have 3x minus 2 equals 0, and this is the binomial that you're going to have when you rewrite it in factored form. Okay, so we have this one out of the way. This next one, the one, that's super easy, because if you know that x equals 1, then you know it came from x minus 1 equals 0, right? And last but not least, if you did that, this one right here, the x equals -3, and you add 3 to both sides, add 3, you'd get x plus 3 equals 0, and that's your binomial. So your final factored form, see, this right here is kind of like when you do zero product property. This is equal to 0, that's equal to 0, that's equal to 0, and solve all 3 of them, and you get these 3 answers. But the better thing to do, or not the better thing, but working backwards, is to actually put them all together. And when we put them all together, we'll get the function f of x or h of x or whatever you want to call it equals 3x minus 2, x minus 1, and also x plus 3. Time to move on to the last one. Number 10, this is the greatest one. Once again, you're going to set them all, write them as answers. And there they all are, all written as answers. Now, let's go with the easiest one first, right here. Well, not +2, but if we subtract 2, that'll get rid of it. Subtract 2. You'll have x minus 2 equals 0, and that's the factored form binomial that if you were to solve, it'll give you x equals 2. Now this one's interesting. The thing is this: you have an answer that has a square root in it. So where did that come from? Well, it came from having an x squared, right? But what must be right here in order for you to end up with the square root of 5? Well, exactly a 5, right? And if you double check it, and you actually went through and you did square root, you would get the square root of 5. Well, technically you'd get plus or minus 5, which is actually important. This should be a plus or minus square root of 5 out there. But anyhow, let's set it equal to 0. So we're going to subtract 5, cancel, subtract 5. You're going to have x squared minus 5 equals 0. And ladies and gentlemen, that's your factored form binomial that actually produces the answer square root of 5, if you were to solve it. And now for the last one, this one's the most interesting one, because how do you get an I? The I comes from taking the square root of a negative number. So let's think about this. This must have been an x squared. You must have had an equal sign, and you probably took the square root of something that's a negative number. So what negative number, when you take the square root of it, it will give you 3i? That'll be a -9, right? Because if you did take the square root and the square root, you get a plus minus 3i. So that this answer came from here. Now you still want to set it equal to 0, so let's go plus 9, cancel, plus 9. You're going to have x squared plus 9 equals 0, and that's it. That's your factored form binomial. So all we need to do is write them all together, and then we're done. So your final answer is f of x equals x squared plus 9, x squared minus 5, and x minus 2. Ta-da, we're done. So these 3 questions should help you out start the homework that you have today. So please make sure you understand this and you could get going on the homework. See you guys tomorrow.